Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to TSK F1. My name's Rich, and this is your daily dose of F1 news. We have got an absolutely ram-packed show this morning. We're going to be touching on Yuki Tsunoda's issues at Alpha Tauri. We're going to have a little bit of analysis of the Ferrari sidepods. We're going to look at a leaked image side by side of the new Alpine. We're also going to be looking at the Mercedes front wing, which we spotted on the launch stream yesterday, and also talking about the shakedown woes for Mercedes. We've got absolutely tons to talk about this morning. But first of all, we're going to start off with Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda obviously has been with Alpha Tauri a little bit of time now. I think he's had 2 full seasons with them now. He's coming into their 3rd season, and the team principal, Franz Tost, has been speaking about him, saying that he struggled with the car last season. But he has said, this year, as I expect we'll have quite a competitive car, Yuki must always aim to be in Q3 and finish races in the points. So a little bit of a warning there from his boss that he's expecting now to be in Q3 in most races and score points in most races. Do you think Yuki Tsunoda is capable of that? Do you think there's a really good driver in there? Do you think he's the type of driver that can deliver points on a regular basis? Sort of, I guess you might want to say sort of Hulkenberg style, as a safe pair of hands and deliver that consistency into his 3rd year. Do you think he's that kind of driver? Now, for what it's worth, my opinion is that Tsunoda, there's a good driver in there, but I remain unconvinced he's of a Formula One standard to do that on the regular. And I don't think I'm being too harsh. I think we've seen flashes of really, really good pace, but also inconsistency. I hope in his 3rd season that we start to see that. We see a little bit of maturity coming from his driving and a little bit more consistency there. Stuart saying, I think he's capable, but I feel that there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. I agree too. I guess he's there. I did wonder whether he was there because of Honda links and things like this. However, I do feel like there's a driver there. Is he for F1 long term? I'd love to know your opinions on that, guys. I really would love to know your opinions on that. But he's been told that this season, Q3 basically is the aim every race, as are points from him. And let's not forget, actually, he's up against Nick de Vries, isn't he? And that's going to be difficult, because it's going to be Nick de Vries' 1st season in Formula One, but I rate him so highly, as you might have seen in my new driver rundown that I posted, I think, last week. There are more quotes here. He said he is a very highly skilled driver and now has a lot of experience with 2 seasons in Formula One. For this reason, of course, he has to score many more points than he did last year. So it does sound a little bit like they expect Yuki Tsunoda to start delivering now. That you're a Formula One driver, mate. Go and deliver. But yeah. Do we think Yuki Tsunoda is capable of that? I'd love to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Now, we've had some leaked images of the new Alpine A523. Now, this is somewhat old news. I do understand that, because, you know, how I do my streaming and things like that. These images have been about, but I thought I would cover these just in case you haven't seen this. But here we are. We've got last year's car up at the top and this year's car down at the bottom. And for me, immediately, I think it's interesting that we see let me move my camera and point this. We see this on the Alpine. Now, this is obviously a different powertrain to what the Mercedes has, but we're seeing these, I think we're terming them cooling cannons. We're seeing these on the Renault-powered Alpine as well as the Mercedes. Now, they were very, very pronounced on the Mercedes, and they look nearly as pronounced on the Alpine. Probably not as much, but you're definitely seeing them there. And if you're looking at the sidepod here as well, on this year's car, it looks a lot steeper on its downwash. It looks like it maintains sort of that horizontal plane for longer. But then this is really hard to do, because this is all backwards. I'm doing a really good job. I hope you appreciate it. Then you see it much more aggressively dive down into the rear of the car. The contrast isn't great on this, but the sidepod intake is also different. You can see there are some flicks and little aero devices on top of the front of the sidepod of the car. You can see that as well. And also the nose of the car. You're doing all right, Rich. The nose of the car, that actually is very different. I'm not sure if you guys can tell, but on the new one, it's much like sort of, I guess, like the Mercedes. They sort of had this blunt nose on last year's car, but now it has this really, really nicely sort of molded into the front sort of wing, and it's smooth all the way up. And I don't know whether it's just the light or the carbon or how the paint or whatever, but it doesn't look to be as rounded to me across the nose cone. You guys, I'd love to know your opinion on that. It looks like the top of the nose is much flatter. Now, I don't know what that means aerodynamically, but it's just something to me that looks like pretty much the front end looks to have changed quite a lot. It looks like it might be a little bit higher at the nose. It looks completely changed at the nose, and potentially actually that they're trying to get more air under the car, which would make sense for the ground effect. Good morning, Rob. Yeah, the nose is flatter. Yeah, I think it is. Obviously, the wing mirrors are bigger. We're seeing that. The front wing end plate looks largely the same, surprisingly. It's sort of got that wavy motion to it, and it's got, I don't know what you call those. What do you call those? I mean, I don't want to call them strakes, but what do you call those that are on the outside of the end plate? Sort of that elongated S above the Alpine of the A522 there. What do we call those? Dive planes? I don't even know what we call them. I've forgotten. But that's the same shape on last year's car. I would guess that this is a louver. Yeah, maybe. But the front wing elements seem the same, but the nose itself seems different to me. So I think there's more to come at that front end. Honestly, I think they're going to change the end plates. I just have a feeling. Louver is an opening, yeah. Louver is the cooling ducts, isn't it? So what you're seeing in black there on the top photo above the BWT, they're louvers. The air intake looks largely similar to me. The air intake, interestingly, they have no aero on top of the halo that I can see at all there. To me, the big changes that are visible, the side pods have changed shape because they downwash a lot more aggressively. I'll move my camera to the front now. You can see the side pods downwash a lot more aggressively now, and the cooling idea has changed, hasn't it? Again, I'd have to look into the science of it, but I do know rear wings work by having the hot air sort of scoop up from underneath it. And I'm wondering whether these cooling cannons that we're now sort of terming them are firing that hot air more directly. Because if you look here where this is, and then look where the exhaust is in relation to that, they're coming out alongside, right? So the hot air from under the engine cover is coming out obviously forward of the exhaust, but it's coming out near the exhaust. Whereas if you look up at the top, that strikes me, out of those louvers, it strikes me as very inefficient compared to that usage of the hot air. And I don't understand it enough to explain, but it feels to me that this is an attempt, these here is an attempt to get the hot air closer to the rear wing and create more rear downforce. That's my understanding of it. It might be wrong. I'm not an aerodynamicist. I'm not a thermodynamicist or any of that stuff. It's just my thoughts and analysis on it. I would love to know your opinion, whether you agree with that, whether you have a different opinion on that, because I'm quite happy to be corrected on these things. On the engine cover, the France flag is gone, the wing or something. Yes, the shark fin, I was about to mention that. I was about to mention that the shark fin that we see on the A522 at the top, that's gone. And we seem to have sort of, I think they've got louvers on the back. I know you guys can't see it. I've got it blown up on another screen. It looks like they've got louvers rather than a shark fin, adding more cooling just here, because it looks bumpy, which I'm thinking is actually slot gaps in the spine of that engine cover. I thought a blown rear wing wasn't allowed. So, that's a whole different subject, Rob. It was a blown rear diffuser. So that was using engine maps and so on to blow hot air out of the exhaust, even when the driver wasn't on throttle, to charge the rear diffuser. This is different. This is literally cooling. It's not artificially using engine maps and throttle. If you go back and listen to back then, Rob, what you'll hear is Vettel was one of the masters of using that tech. You'll hear that the car sounds on throttle as it's off throttle going through corners. It's a different thing, and I realize I've just oversimplified that, but yeah, this is a different thing. This is literally, I think, trying to be clever using the hot air, what you have, rather than augmenting artificially. I don't know if I'm making sense there. Yeah, I guess it's a curved winglet of some sort. Welcome back to the Black Panther F1 Mercedes car. It's a good-looking car for me. The way they're going more and more sharper down, do you think it looks like Merc Zero Pod could actually be the best solution if they get it switched on? It's hard to say, because I think, again, I'm no aerodynamicist, but there does seem to be we're going to see shortly the Ferrari idea. I'll maybe leave that until we get onto the Ferraris, which I'm not sure is next. I think it's next. I knew we had loads to talk about today. Please hit that like button, guys. I'm loving this part of the season. I'm so hyped for the F1 content. Hit that like button on the stream, and please hit that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner. But there we are. Tonight as well, just to remind you guys, tonight we're going to be live, and hopefully, if all goes to plan, me, Harry, and John will be live together doing the Alpine launch on this channel. We're all going to be mic'd up. We're all going to be sharing our thoughts, and we'll be live for that. It's the first time we've tried to do it. Got some bits on the way. Hopefully, they arrive in time so that we can do all the sound check and everything before they get here. But yeah, tonight for the Alpine launch, it'd be brilliant if you guys could join us. Please do. You'll see times and stuff coming over on the ads over there. Now, let's have a quick look at the Ferrari. Now, this was another image that I stumbled across, and I think this shows you what the difference actually is between the 2022 Ferrari and the 2023 Ferrari. For me, that looks like they have gone so aggressive with their side pod shape. And this is the thing, and this is why I just wanted to wait just a moment with what you said there, Ian. This is what I'm loving about Formula One at the moment, that we're seeing different concepts and they can work in different ways, right? So what we're seeing here is for me, a very, very aggressive top surface of that side pod with louvers added in. The interesting one here is that one for me. Do you see that vertical slit there? Right. So there are a couple of theories on this, and I don't have another image to back this up. I apologize. But imagine the side pod, okay, at the front. I don't have another image. I wish I've only just thought of this. I've remembered this. The side pod at the front, down by the floor, there is another vertical slit. I won't pretend again that I know the aerodynamics, but there are some theories that this is an S-duct from the front of the side pod at the bottom, and that the air is coming from somewhere down here and up and through into that slit there. I've forgotten what it is that an S-duct actually is doing, but to me, it would be charging air on the inside surface of this side pod, right? And maybe speeding up the airflow over the top. Again, it's a bit beyond me, but that is one of the theories. But we're unsure because other people have said the slit that comes in the front of the side pod is actually cooling the electronics, which are at the bottom of the side pod. So no one's particularly sure whether this is just a cooling, whether this is a cooling duct or it's some kind of fancy S-duct. Where did we first see the S-duct? Was it at McLaren years ago that we saw the S-duct? And this is a passive aerodynamic element. So it's, as far as I'm aware, it's completely legal. They're not allowed ones where you intervene with them, but if it's a passive one, it's allowed. Rob saying tidier lines at the lower front of that side pod, way more sculpted. Yeah, and it sort of dips down more, doesn't it? Glad saying they all seem to have stuck with the same concept as last season's with some slight modifications. And I think it's important to recognize the influence of the cost cap in that, Gled. I think that's what that is to do with. I think gone are the days. Let's say Ferrari's methodology was correct. They just got certain bits wrong. Say it was faster than the Red Bull last season. They just got it a little bit wrong. The design wasn't as mature as it should have been. I think because of the cost cap, gone are the days where Mercedes, Red Bull, whoever could all converge immediately on that design. And actually, we saw Christian Horner. Was it Christian Horner? It could have been a pairing of Christian Horner and Adrian Newey last season saying that they very sort of quickly looked at the Mercedes Zero pod, saw it was interesting, but they don't have the capability or the resources to actually go down that avenue and research whether it was viable. All they could do was go, oh, that's interesting. Could that work? Yeah. And that was basically it, because they don't have the resource to do that. And is that a good thing? Do we think that's a good thing? Is it good that they have to stick with their things? I'm going to come on to Mercedes shortly, and about what they've been saying. Rob, the S-duct, I believe, smoothens turbulent airflow into a more streamlined flow. Yeah, that would make sense. And I suppose you're diverting air to where you want it, because that air wouldn't have been there without the S-duct either, would it? But I just found that interesting, because also, actually, worth pointing out, I forgot to point this out. Can you see up there, it's sort of above these louvers, there's a big winglet that points out. Can you see the AWS logo there? Has anyone noticed that winglet that sticks out? So you've got the halo, and then rear of that, you've got another winglet. And it's almost like there's the wing mirror winglet that sticks out at the side. And it's almost like that winglet and that winglet are smoothing out the airflow for this side pod. Can you see that, guys? I don't know if you can tell it's there. please do smash the like on the video. And it's just an interesting thing, I think, this, because it really does show quite a difference for me, that sidepod. It's much more sculpted and much more aggressive looking for me. And yeah, that winglet's there, and I think it's legal. I think it's legal. Yeah, it's there. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I noticed it when I was looking at this image. But there we go. There's a difference with the Ferrari. Now, we'll move on. We've got 2 more bits of news. Oh, my God. There's so much news today. Half-hour news show's nearly not enough. Right. The eagle-eyed spotted this. Now, on the Mercedes launch, I think it was Harry from the Sausage Curb said, I thought the slit in the front wing was illegal. And then I looked and said, it's joined. There is a join there. The Ferrari front wing is legal. Which part of it, Jonathan? Because I've done an entire video on the front wing. So which part of the front wing? Come back to me with that one and I'll tell you why it is or it isn't. Now, Harry spotted that there was a slit there, and watching the stream, I understood what he meant. That gap, if it wasn't joined, was illegal. They're not allowed to do that because it has to be a part of the end plate by regulation. And Mercedes seem to have got around this by putting the smallest little carbon joins you possibly could to make that a end plate joined thing. And it just seems like a neat yet cheeky way of getting around this regulation. Now, if anyone has any insight as to the benefit of having that gap there, please do put it in the chat, because that is beyond me. I have no idea what the benefit of having that slit is. And I won't lie, in my head, it makes more sense not to have that slit because you're conditioning the air towards the front tire. But maybe the end of those winglets, are they angled outwards? Does it look like they're angled outwards? Like out that way to you at the back? Maybe with the slit there, flexibility of the front wing, good shout, good shout. Flexibility of the front wing is not a bad shout, because this is a thing, if you're new to Formula One, as speed increases, the winglets on the front wing elements all sort of move down as downforce increases and speed increases. But it also reduces drag if they move down as well. So they could be flexible. DGM says, could those little tabs be designed to fail? The regs say that it needs to be attached. Yes, I would almost 100% say that the regs will state they need to be attached. I would be shocked if those broke and it got through scrutineering at the end of the race. It would make it an illegal wing at the end of the race. I'd be very surprised if they could get that through at the end of the race, personally. But I could be wrong. Again, I'm not an aerodynamicist. It's an interesting idea, DJM, for sure. It could be a balance of a downforce at the front end. Vortices. Now, my initial thought is if they're angled out and you've got a slit, maybe if you think about the car, the tyres are basically bricks, aren't they? They're bricks of drag. They're just in the way of everything. I'm wondering if, what is that? What's the depth of that front wing? I don't know, like 30 centimeters? They're actually bigger than you think. So even if you can bring the airflow forward, say, 15 centimeters, and you can flick the airflow out, you're taking that away from the big draggy area of the front tire. And maybe that's the advantage of having that slit there. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm now analyzing as I look at it. Maybe it drags the air outboard of the tire. I'm not entirely sure, but there we go. That was spotted on the launch stream by Harry, and then I looked at it and saw those little joins there. So top job from the Sausage Curb's own Harry in saying that in chat. And I had a quick look at it if you were here for the launch yesterday. 25 minutes in, and God, there's so much to talk about today. Right then, please do remember to smash a like on the stream and also subscribe down below, guys. Now, this is probably what everyone has tuned in for. The Mercedes Shakedown woes. Now, how is, like, you know, we have to take things with a pinch of salt, and we have to remember, we have to think about what a shakedown is. What a shakedown is. And before we start this, like, people are freaking out, but let's talk about what a shakedown is. For me, a shakedown is literally to start a car, check it's running, a systems check, to make sure everything's bolted on right and you're good to go, right? So the story is that yesterday, with George Russell at the wheel, the W14 left the garage and it started misfiring. And there was a misfiring issue and it wasn't happy at all. And they had to pit in and they had to look at it. It was at the USA. Or you need, Jonathan, look at the video. If you're talking about the Ferrari front wing, I made a video on this channel. Sorry to divert from this news bit. I made a video on the channel the other day about the Ferrari front wing. Go and have a watch of it. Lots of research. Go and have a look at it, dude. And the Ferrari wing, yeah, it's all about the Ferrari wing, if you want to know. It's like a 3-minute video. It's worth watching. But anyway, back to Mercedes. Now, I've got a little bit of a poll. So the engine started misfiring at Silverstone when they were doing the shakedown laps. And what it appears to be, and the story coming out of Mercedes, was that it's a mounting problem of the power unit within the W14, and that they fixed the issue. They knew what the issue was, and it was immediately solvable. That sort of, they had to take the car away, but it was solvable. They knew what it was. They could see in the data what caused it and why. And it's an interesting one because it's the only team that we've heard that I think we've heard issues coming out of it. Now, I'd love to know your opinion, and there's a poll in the chat about whether this is going to affect them going into Bahrain. Now, what they've said is that today they're going back to Silverstone and they're just going to complete the filming day today. They're just going to do it a day later because the car went back to factory and it's all been sorted. And I suppose that's the good thing about doing your shakedown at a circuit that's right next to your factory, or nearly, because what is it? It's like 20 minutes down the road from Silverstone, I think, the Mercedes factory. Now, I did just see a headline as I was going live about what George Russell had to say about this as well, because I'd heard he diverted the question about porpoising, which is the question all Mercedes fans want answering, right? So when asked about this, he's said, it's been a smooth day, but it's difficult to say. Last year, we came away from the shakedown not with too many thoughts, to be honest. So we're so compromised by weather, which was true. If you remember last year, Mercedes doing their shakedown after their launch, it was throwing down with rain. It was horrendous. But you've got to take the results from today with a pinch of salt and make sure there's no major scares, and just make sure the car's running today in Bahrain. That's going to be the true test. As much as we want to get out of a day like today, it's kind of meaningless in this regard. When you look at the designer has said, when you look at the cars that have been released, it's all in the detail. Key bits we've completely changed to the suspension to help with the handling. There are significant changes in the bodywork, although the core stayed the same. And that's from Mercedes. And yeah, George Russell avoided the question of porpoising. Now, I don't know how many laps. I've not seen any detail on how many laps Mercedes got in with the W14 before they started having the misfiring issues. For those of you that don't know, what tends to happen at these things is that the car and driver will go out and do a lap, an installation lap. And you might, on a testing day, you might see that absolutely tons where, you know, George Russell jumps in the car, goes and does a tentative lap of Silverstone, checking systems, moving dials and whatnot, and on the steering wheel, back in the pits, debrief, jump in the car, another set of variables to test. And to me, it's probably in that whole section where they've done something and it's just started misfiring and they've got a problem, which again is the intent of a shakedown. I've seen this blown out of all proportion on the internet, which is normal, and I suppose we'll only see. Now, all I will say is to Mercedes fans is when the hybrid regulations launched, some of you may remember that Red Bull went to testing and they were hideously unreliable. And it was taking them like 7 hours to change out the power unit. They weren't able to get to the end of the pit lane. And I think they completed something like 5 laps over 3 days in the first test. And then while they didn't win the championship, I think they were very quick. So F1 teams are elite and they can figure these things out pretty damn quickly with all the data they have and the intelligence they have behind it. John saying, is it possible that the reliability which Red Bull and Ferrari suffered is a natural progression with these cars, which Merc never had, as they were slow? Well, there was a big thing last year which suggested that for most of the season, the Mercedes engine was actually turned down on its performance and that they relied on their reliability to get the results that they got because they knew they couldn't turn it up for the races last season because the car would porpoise and they would just go into a window of handling that the car wasn't happy with. So it's an interesting question, to be honest, John, because the data suggested that the Mercedes wasn't the fastest in a straight line. Was that entirely down to the dragginess of the car, or was that indeed due to them turning down the engine last season? The reports were rife about that last season, so I'm inclined to somewhat agree. There was some seriously intelligent analysis, I think it was, done by Driver 61, where he compared engines, and it turned out that the Mercedes was still like the second best engine behind, I want to say it was actually the Renault engine last season. If I remember rightly, because if you remember, the Renault engine was rapid but hideously unreliable. So I think a lot of last season, the Mercedes may have been turned down with a draggy and suboptimal car. That's not me being a Mercedes lover. I think that's just being honest with what we've been presented with. That's what we've been presented with from the outside, and it's hard to say it otherwise. Could they have had the engine turned up fully? Of course, and it could have just been entirely down to a hideous car. I don't recall many Mercedes problems last season with many of the cars generally. So who knows? None of us know, that's for sure. But there we have it. I probably could have made this half-hour show an hour show because there's just been absolutely loads to talk about today. And thank you so much for hanging out. There's loads of you in today. I think we hit 30 viewers there at one point. Right, guys, front wing, guys. I'll keep saying it because I'm working hard to make the content. I'm going to literally link you it. Right? I am going to link you it. Give me a minute. I am going to link you it. Right here. The US. Right here. There. And in fact, I will show you it just to prove There you go, look. I made a video specifically on Ferrari's special front wing 2 days ago. Go and check it out, guys. Go and check it out. Slow Sports News isn't where you should be going. You should be coming to TSK F1 for all of your news, because I know my shit and I'm quicker. So just subscribe and like. And instead of going on Sky Sports News, go, what's Rich got to say? And check the socials, because I've already made a video about it. Trust me. Right, anyway. Right then. Will these issues cause problems for Mercedes in Bahrain? 78% of you say no. And I can say car. Right then, guys, that is it. There might be some more content. Actually, there's probably going to be a YouTube short later on today, but we are back later on this evening. What time? Probably just before 8 o'clock. Just before 8 o'clock, I think it is, for the Alpine launch. Front wing video. Go and watch the front wing video. Go and watch the front wing video. Just before 8 o'clock. Just before 8 o'clock with the Alpine launch with Harry and John. Please join me then, and I will see you later. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.